Well, the first time I remember seeing Deep Purple was Mark II, and it was at the Red Car Jazz Club. And I was too busy chasing fabulous looking girls, I think, really. But I do remember seeing Richie being this really magnetizing guy to watch, magnetic. You know, he was like a black ballet dancer up there. Yeah, it sounded great, but my loins were bursting with lust, which hasn't really changed actually over the decades. I'm still as lustful and rampant as a rabbit in a national park. But the second time, the most important, was the very beginning of Mark II. I was in a band, a Yorkshire band, that opened for Deep Purple at Bradford University. And I'm extraordinarily thrilled to report that the amazing John Lord, God rest his soul, asked for my address, because I didn't have a phone, in case it didn't work out with a new guy, which of course was the amazing Ian Gillan, so of course it worked out. But I watched every day, got out of bed for months to see if there was a letter inviting me to join Deep Purple there, but of course there wasn't. My time was going to come a bit later. But yes, I did see them. Great band. I was a local singer, and people were very complimentary. My talent was kind of older than me, so I was always working with older guys and very talented musicians. Um, I, I'd left art college because of economic crisis with at home, and my parents. Both my parents were unemployed, which was a blight on the area that I was living as a kid. And a friend of mine, I'd gone to art college, but it didn't get a grant. So I left college, and the only job I could find where I could keep my hair long was working in a very fashionable boutique in a town called Redcar, and the boutique was called Gentry, which I think is a hairdresser's now. But I loved singing as a vehicle of expression. I truly loved it. And I was reading Melody Maker in the shop. It was quiet, and a guy came in, and I put the Melody Maker, this music magazine newspaper, down and got up and said, "Can I help you?" And the guy's looking around. He says, "Don't I know you?" I said, "Oh, I don't think so." And he went, "Yes, I do. You're that singer guy, aren't you?" And it was so kind of diminishing, withering, I think, whatever. So anyway, he ended up not buying anything, bastard, not buying anything and leaving. So I was somewhat crestfallen. I walked back to my Melody Maker, and I opened it up to a picture of John Lord, like almost a back view, sitting at his organ, and underneath it said, "Deep Purple still haven't found a singer. They are considering unknowns." I closed it, got up, walked out of the shop, locked it up, went round to a public phone box and called a dear friend of mine called Roger Barker, who was like a kind of local manager for me, and he also was the guy who booked all the acts at Redcar Jazz Club, our amazing local musical venue. And first off, he laughed, and he went, "You're serious, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "Okay, well, call me back at 6 o'clock, and I'll give the Deep Purple office a call and see what they say." So I called him back at 6 o'clock. He said, They want a picture and a tape." And I went, "Oh, God." The only tape I had was like a demo tape, and I was kind of drunk. And I borrowed a picture of myself as a Boy Scout, because I didn't have any pictures, off my mother's mantelpiece, swearing to my mother I would ensure the safe return of the picture of me, saluting Boy Scout fashion. So we sent this off, and I pretty much gave up. And then I got a message to call Roger, and he goes, "You're not going to believe this. You've got an audition." And it was like, huh? So part of me knew if I had an opportunity to actually go down an audition for Deep Purple, I'd have a chance in some perverse way, And so Roger, bless his heart, he set it up and drove me down to London for this audition. And what had happened was that each member of Purple or their assistants were coming into the Purple offices at 25 Newman Street in London West 1, and each of them picking up tapes, cassettes, albums, whatever, floor to ceiling of people after the job. And each one would take a bunch home and review them and stuff. And Ian Pace, the drummer with Purple, he was the one who picked up this batch of tapes that had my dreadful letter, Dear Deep Purple, the photograph of me as a Boy Scout, and this drunken tape. And Ian told me later, he called Ritchie Blackmore and said, you know, I've found somebody really interesting. He's obviously got a sense of humor, but he's got a really good tone. He's rat-arse drunk, but I think he might be worth us having a look at, which is astonishing to think back on how all of these very amateur elements fell into place for such a gig of such magnitude. And it was my destiny, obviously. And I had the pleasure, of course, of being able to thank John and Ian, who actually joined me in the early Whitesnake and helped me establish Whitesnake as an international band. But I'd been able to thank all of the guys, Glenn Hughes and I, or Glyes. Glenn Hughes and I communicate almost daily. So I've been able to express my gratitude to all of those guys for an incredibly courageous decision to give a completely unknown, unrecorded, sober at least, musician, singer, such a golden opportunity in starting me on this amazing journey. And of course, ultimately, after the tragic loss of John Lord, that opened my heart to reach out to Ritchie Blackmore, and so I could thank him personally after 30 years of not so pleasant energy between us. Oh yes, it was at Scorpio Studios, which was in the basement of what used to be Capitol Records on Marylebone Road in London. And of course, when I saw it was a recording studio, I completely panicked because my only experience was a demo studio and a very unsympathetic engineer, which is where I ended up making. The reason I got drunk during these tapes, that the audition ultimately became the audition tapes for Deep Purple, was because of a really insensitive engineer who I said, could I have I had no experience in a studio. And I said, can I hold a mic when I sing just to, and he goes, no, you sing into this thing, just fixed from the ceiling, If you can't sing, you can't sing, Oh, thank you so much, So that was the beginning of that. So I saw that, and that chilled me. So on the way to the audition, I picked up a bottle of Bell's whiskey. And Roger, who was driving me, saw this and hid it from me when we got to the studio waiting for the other guys to arrive. And of course, the Coverdale knows, so I found it immediately. It was just sipping little bits. I wasn't, And then, of course, John Lord found it, and followed by Glenn Hughes. So we were all, having a go at my whiskey. And I think part of me thinks that I got the job because I brought the booze, But I have vivid memories of the last one to arrive was Glenn, who burst through these swing doors of the studio with his Easy Rider glasses hanging off, this amazing mane of hair, his shoulder bag, the Rickenbacker bass in its case, just falling in. Hello, mate, sorry I'm late, one of these. It was just glorious. Ritchie arriving with his wife at the time, Babs, with 2 Irish wolfhounds. One of them I remember was Stroikey, but it was vivid memories. And the only Deep Purple song I sang at the audition was Strange Kind of Woman. And I sang it in a bluesy kind of fashion. And Ritchie said to me, one of the few things that Ritchie actually said to me there, because he's very internalized, very, very into his head. Whereas John Lord was completely like an amazingly warm uncle, relaxing me and stuff. And to this day, I will be always grateful to John for many, many things. But Ritchie said, wow, that's how I heard it being sung when I wrote it, which was, and then we took a breather. They went out talking, and I was at the piano just trying to relax and playing this kind of Stevie Wonder style song that I'd been working on. And Glenn Hughes, of course, came in and went, hey, what's that? And he started singing along. And of course, Glenn's got this stunning, amazing, soulful voice. So, and we just started singing together at the piano. And, this certainly wasn't a Purple idea of a song. It was more Aretha Franklin or something, major sevenths, minor sevenths, and that was really encouraging. That and then John came in and Pacey started playing along. Well, it certainly wasn't Richie's cup of tea, but the audition was really amazing because it was the full band. Richie says, "Yeah, you can sing rock. Let's see what you like on ballads." And I went, "Oh, okay." He said, "What do you want to do?" And the first thing I thought of was "Yesterday" by the Beatles. And of course, these guys are remarkable musicians. You know, John Lord's inversions and stuff, and Richie is an indescribably accomplished musician, guitar player. So we do this thing, and I do more of the Ray Charles approach to the song, you know, more bluesy, soul-y stuff. And John Lord would remark for decades afterwards how that was the sell for me, for him, you know, was the sensitivity that I had dealing with that song. Strangely enough, you know, you would imagine it would be the rock, the intense stuff. And I had a big scream back then, certainly not Ian's scream, but I consciously backed away from that, and Glenn took more of that stuff. I started introducing my scream to the populace with the Whitesnake thing, or Live Purple, you know. But yeah, it was amazing that one of the reasons I think I got the job was more of a ballad as opposed to the rock approach. You know. Oh no, absolutely not. This was all just jamming on the spot, and thankfully I've always been blessed with the ability to improvise and jam, you know, with my love of blues and jazz music, that aspect. So no, that was the big bonus. They were, yeah, and it was incredible for me, as familiar with great musicians as I was, you know, with all the bands I'd worked with. This was something else. This was extraterrestrial domain, you know, the stuff that these guys were playing. It truly was a magical experience. And even more vivid now after working on this project, you know, my memories and reconnecting with time, you know, that I'm not Mr. Nostalgia, so I don't go, "Oh, those were the days," or anything like that. I truly appreciate every chapter of my life. But the more I got into the Purple album with the guys, the more I was reconnecting with vivid, clear images of way back when with Purple. It was amazing.